I got to a point recently then where everything was working quite well and I was happy with it again after all those months of problems. And as soon as I did get it working again, I decided the best thing to do would be to take a load of it apart. I'm kind of hoping there is a bit of method to this madness, but for reasons I'll probably mention in another video, I came to the conclusion that I needed a little branch line style station in this corner. So it's just going to be a kind of two platform affair, but I've had to dig a few things up so that I can actually have the kind of the two lines and the points. So that's what I'm working on now. I think what happened was, as soon as I started to realise I was making decent progress with the track here, and really those double slips and the turnouts that face them are the most complex bit of track until I get round to the other end. So I realised once I'm kind of at a point here, which I'm sort of at now, where the next job is to just start laying lots of track and making my way around the curves, I realised I didn't have a plan that I was happy with for the station, and if I didn't know what the station needed and where I needed to be feeding track into it, I couldn't really progress with the track from here because I didn't know where it was going. So that got me right back into any rail and a lot of thought about what the station will look like and what it will do. This is the plan of my layout that I've been working on since the start, really, and it's very rough and ready, and it's been changed so many times. It's got a lot of really terrible curves and wonky lines on it, but that doesn't really matter because all I'm interested in is kind of getting a rough idea of where everything is, whether there's space for the stuff that I want to add in, and then to kind of, as I'll hopefully demonstrate here, so I sort of imagine stuff running around it and see if it actually serves the purpose that it's meant to serve or whether it throws up any more problems. And I'll very quickly, if I put layers on and get rid of the top deck, this is kind of how it's been for the last, I don't know, 6 months, year, whatever it is. Two lines, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and I've really been quite strict with the anti-clockwise and clockwise lines. That is the direction that they run in. That's the direction that the signals are set up for running in, for the signal masts are set up for running in, and really it's kind of against the rules to run in the wrong direction. A couple of exceptions here. If something is coming anti-clockwise from down from the upper deck, it has to run over a little bit of track here, a bit of the clockwise track to get back onto the anti-clockwise line, and similarly here for anything that's running up the hill from the anti-clockwise line. But apart from that, very much the rules are anti-clockwise and clockwise, and stuff is set up in the yard. This isn't a real representation of the yard, but this is where it is. Trains are set up in the yard to run in the direction of that yard. So this is the anti-clockwise yard, so stuff will leave in this direction, and this is the clockwise line, and stuff set up configured and will leave in this direction. The incline is of course an exception because it has to be bi-directional. Clockwise trains will go up the hill in this direction to get to the top. Anti-clockwise trains will come down the hill in this direction to get to the bottom, and vice versa on the other end. And that's kind of how it currently pretty much is. So if I then add the scenic level back on, have I done that yet? And then get rid of these, so go back in the middle again. This is everything. So this is the upper deck added on top as well, and I've kind of made reasonable progress. I think I've kind of got this bit done now up at the top. And once I'd really started thinking about getting because it's just long runs, especially in this direction, just long runs of track now. So I thought I really need to be on top of what I'm going to do with the station before I start running this track around, so that I kind of know where to bring it round up here and at the other end as well. So that I really started thinking, what's the purpose of the station? What do I want to do? Well, first of all, there has to be some room for some scenery, and I have to really make sure I leave room for scenery. And the only real room there is kind of a square here, which is lower deck. This stuff does come along on the upper deck, but there's a break here, and this stuff is still lower deck baseboard. And then from that point onwards, I think this area here is upper deck baseboard. But I'm actually going to cut out a bit here, probably up to about there, which will be lower deck, and that'll kind of provide a bit more scenic. There'll probably be a kind of a frontage to the station here facing in this direction, and then kind of imaginary, because the entrance will be on the lower deck and all of the stations on the upper deck, imaginary subways and things underneath and steps onto the platforms, and that's how access to the platforms would be provided. And probably over here, I'm thinking like an overflow car park. There's this is the incline loop, but it's really still quite low, so tiny little embankment there running down to an overflow car park. That's what I'm fancying, and a bridge here because this is all lower deck here. A bridge going under there, imagining that these two lines don't exist, which would provide access to or from the overflow car park to the main station frontage here, and then probably along here a little U-bend road going like that kind of gives drop-off access to the station front, which is here, and that's generally how I see the station developing. So once I got that done, then I start thinking about, well, what's its purpose? It has to do something. And first of all, of course, it's just a couple of platforms, and there will be days when all I want to do is forget about automation, all that kind of stuff, and just have a couple of trains running on the upper deck, a couple of trains running on the lower deck, and just sit and listen to them whizzing around. And of course, that's doable, and I will do that. But I want it to have a bit more purpose as well. And I am kind of imagining a station mode. So up on the upper deck, there are three lines. This is the clockwise line, this is the anti-clockwise line, and this is a bi-directional access line around the edge. And the general idea of this access line is just to make it easier to transition trains between the two decks. So, for example, if an anti-clockwise train is coming up the hill here, it's going to cross. Now, it can't get directly onto the anti-clockwise line here because I just thought it was too many points. So what it would do is it would come onto this access line, come around here, which it acts as a passing loop, and it has then access either probably here to get itself onto the anti-clockwise line and into the station. Similarly with a clockwise train, a clockwise train does have direct access to the clockwise line, but if its destination is the station, there might be a clockwise train already in there, so it can get onto this access line, head the way around here, sit in here and wait till it has clearance, and then come down onto the clockwise line. Similarly with an anti-clockwise line leaving the upper deck, it can sit on a platform here, go straight onto the access line, get itself around and get down. And that kind of describes, I think, one mode for this station, which would be the avoidance of the same train coming through the station every 20 seconds. So it would very much be a point of the only reason why any train would come up from the lower deck onto the upper deck would be to stop at a station platform and then leave again and head down, so you don't have that constant loop. And I think that would be an interesting thing to automate, stuff coming out of the yard, heading up, stopping at the station, maybe doing a couple of laps of the lower deck and then parking again. So that's one of its purposes, and something that I'd be quite interested to try and implement. Something else I really wanted was do they call these bay platforms? I don't know what they're called, but a terminating platform really. And I'd like to have two, but I just couldn't, because if I'd had this platform along here, there just wouldn't have been room for scenery. So I ended up kind of compromising and just having the one bay platform. And I thought, great. And then this is what these diagrams are really useful for, because then I sort of started plotting what trains would do. So and this is obviously just for DMUs. The vast majority of the DMUs will fit on this platform. So, and I do have quite a few of them, so it made sense. And I thought, okay, it's going to be some kind of shuttle affair. And obviously the easy way to do this would be if there was another bay platform here. It leaves this one and it ends up back in this one. But I don't have that now because I don't have the space for two of them. So I started to imagine what a train would do. So, okay, it's leaving here, and it has to obey the clockwise, anti-clockwise rules, all that kind of stuff. So it's coming out here, and it's gone clockwise, so it crosses the anti-clockwise line, gets onto the clockwise line, and it can either do some loops or it can head down the hill. It gets down the hill, and it comes to the lower deck, and it eventually might do some loops again, but eventually it parks itself in the clockwise yard. And it might be behind something, it might need to shuffle around, but eventually it's going to come back out of the clockwise yard. And again, rules about direction, it's only going to go in this direction, it's going to head back up the hill, it's going to get itself onto the clockwise line eventually, and it's not going to be able to get back into the bare platform because it's going in the wrong direction. So I realised I don't want to run it. I don't want to bring it out of the yard the wrong way because these lines just aren't set up for that. The signal mass logic isn't set up for that. I don't want to run half a lap in the wrong direction, clockwise on an anti-clockwise line, whatever it is. So I quickly came to the conclusion that it's got to stop somewhere. It has to stop, and it has to, once it's stopped, reverse, go back in the opposite direction. And initially I was going to just stick a little side in somewhere where it could park and then eventually come back out again. But I thought, actually, if I'm going to do that, I sort of picked this area as where the siding would be. And then I quickly thought, well, if I'm doing something like that, why not have a little station, a tiny little branch line station with probably just one platform. The other one's just like a through route, because all of the long trains are going to be using this to get up and down between the decks, but they still need access around here, but they'd be way too long to stop at this station, so it may end up with just one platform, and I'm not quite decided on that yet, but a station. And that would mean my clockwise train, as it leaves this bay, it can cross just as it did before onto the clockwise line, come down the clockwise line, and then here head across to the incline, come right around the incline, but instead of leaving the incline here, it stays on it, starts heading back up the hill again, comes all the way around to here, gets itself into this platform and stops. And then it maybe stops for whatever it is, 5 minutes, and then it heads back again. It goes down the incline, it goes up the incline, it comes back onto the upper deck. But this time it's running anti-clockwise, so it has to use the access line because it's not allowed to run wrong direction. So it gets onto the access line, and at this point crosses onto the anti-clockwise line, and then it then has access through this double slip back into the bare platform where it's finished its journey. And I was quite pleased with myself for getting to that point. But then I realised, actually, if that's happening, I can have two. Because if there's one parked here ready to go in this direction, there could be another one parked here ready to go in this direction, because at this point they're going to pass each other. The anti-clockwise line comes up and uses this access line. The clockwise one comes up and uses the clockwise line, so it's coming down here. So you have this space here, which is easily long enough for a long train, let alone DMU, where they can pass each other. So actually it can be a kind of a two train affair where they one is in this platform, one's in that platform, and they swap. And of course then as well, what because I've got more than two DMUs, there's the option to just maybe terminate. It's done a few trips, it will head back around, actually come into the yard, park itself up, be replaced by another DMU. So I think that I might have gone on a bit, sorry, but that really outlines everything that this layout will do, its function, its purpose, and how the various modes that it will run in. So all I need to do now is lay all that track.
And this is kind of physically the corner that I'm talking about. So the upper deck lines are going to come across here. There'll be three of them, and they'll curve round here and somehow turn into four, and then they're going to turn the platform. So I've kind of got this for a rough obviously platform here and tracks in between. And there, as long as I've got that kind of width, it means this is the bit here I was talking about that I can cut out, so then extend what might be kind of roads, access, car parks, that kind of thing, that may even spread to over there. I quite fancy having a little mound, kind of a little hill coming down from that little bit of raised track there, and then car park leading up, like overflow car park leading up to it, with some kind of fake tunnel maybe going under there that pretends you can get out to there anyway. But it means I can cut at least all of the first board out from this point onwards. The station's still got room to fit there, and I can have lower baseboard here as some kind of like little loop access road, and then an entrance sort of facing this way at the lower level to a station with the kind of hint that you would go into it and then go up some stairs, lifts, escalators, whatever, to get to this level, and there'd be some kind of entrance to get onto the platforms, which will be running sort of down there. And so I've ended up with this little corner here as some kind of start of a branch line station. I really had to squeeze the points in. There's a set there with them. That was a pig, that point motor. And there's a motor kind of under the baseboard in that tiny gap there. And naturally, I got it in once. The first one I put in failed. I got another one in, that one failed. So that it's taken 3 attempts to get a working motor in there. And it's just about there. But I've ended up with enough space and clearance for that's the longest train that'll sit there, just a little three car class 101. Everything else will be the 2 longer coach type DMUs, but they'll sit happily in a little branch platform there. I'll put some station decoration. I can't decide whether I just want one platform at the far side and this is a through line, a bypass line, or a platform on here as well, and that's for another time. So the idea is that this is the end of the journey for the train that's left that bay platform on the station. It'll come, pull into here, sit there for a while, and then head back off in the opposite direction. Now, something I learned with the lower deck, especially with this yard, and I can't quite demonstrate it here because the ends are covered up, but the way I did it is I started the lower deck over the other end, and I kind of it came around in both directions until it was the track had got to about there over that side and the same sort of place behind me, and then all that was left to do was the yard. And what I found really difficult and really quite failed with actually was with so many lines, however many there are, there's 2 up there as well, all sort of facing each other, having to start at that end and then having to start at the end behind me as well. I really struggled to line them up so that it would, the line would start from a set of points at that end and go perfectly straight all the way along here and meet with its corresponding set of points at the other end. And I really didn't achieve it, and there'll be kind of footage from a year or so ago when I was doing it that shows that actually what I ended up doing was just kind of attaching each line that came down here to just the nearest set of points that it would attach to. So I've really kind of learnt from that, and this time with the upper deck, because the station is going to be so okay, there's not going to be quite as many lines, but it's going to be a similar thing. But with the station, when a line starts at one end, it really does have to exactly meet up with the set of points at the other. I've kind of realised the easy way to do that is not to spread out in both directions from here, because I've got sort of 3 pretty simple lines going off there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start bringing the line round to the station in this direction, and then carry on, whatever that is, that clockwise, carry on clockwise all the way around the layout, and then come back in here and meet it all up here, because that's probably the easiest place to meet it up. And so off I go in this direction, and I'm just trying to get this board still going to have to come up because some of the pillars underneath aren't fastened down yet, and I haven't quite got it all lined up. But I just thought it would be a good idea to get an idea of what kind of curvature I'm looking at here, because I did once buy the biggest compass I could possibly find so I could try and measure it, but it was still nowhere near enough. It needs to have a span of about 2 meters, I think, to be able to draw a curve like that. So this is starting to give me a rough idea of the curvature I'll need. It's not fastened down there, so it's gone a bit straight, but this sort of gives me a rough idea. And by comparison here, I've got 2 Hornby radius 4 curves there, just to kind of give me a comparison thing. And obviously I want the upper deck, there are going to be tighter curves than this, but I want the upper deck to be an absolute minimum 4th radius curve. So this is kind of a good template to have lying around, just so I can compare what I'm laying to what the minimum is. Obviously there'll be 3 lines here. There is another one that'll be coming along here that isn't down at all yet, so there'll be 3 curves coming around here, and it seems pretty comfortable that I'm not going to get anywhere near 4th radius. Over on the station side, though, it's looking a bit tighter. This is those fourth radius curves again, and they're going off to what will be just the station down there. That's all just obviously just place holding track and bits of wood that are about platform size. But here, it looks like it's going to be a lot tighter. These are the three lines that have come around the corner, which is just over there. And because of the way the sort of the baseboard covers track in place, I mean, I can extend this, I can put another bit there, but I sort of fancied having that little break there if I can keep it. But it's looking like the inside curve might be pretty close to fourth radius here, which isn't too bad. I think I knew that on this side. The reason why it's a bit tighter is because I really need, or would ideally prefer, to get the platforms started quite early, because my longest train is 2.5 meters, which would take it, even if it's starting here, I think actually it will start a little bit further down. It might start at the next rafter thing along, but to get 2.5 meters, it really is going right down to the other end of there, just in time for it to start curving. And on the plan, I've got all kinds of track work that needs to happen here. There needs to be a double slip thing up here, and a lot of kind of interchanges between the lines before the platforms actually start. This set of points for the lower line has to get kind of clear the width of that platform so that it can provide that line there. So there's a lot of track work that needs to happen early on. The introduction of double slips has certainly helped that, in that it gets the track work done a lot earlier than it did when I was just using points. But even still, if I'm going to get my 2.5 meters of platform, I really need to be very efficient with the track work around here, and what will help that, of course, is having the curves finished as early as possible, have a little bit of straight track after the curve, and then start with all the point work. Actually, just a brief word on track. Now, the track that's gone down on all of the lower deck, all of the yard and all of the incline is track that came up from the last layout. So it was bought maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more than that now. And at the time, I was even more inexperienced with model railways than I am now. And I bought, for the flexible parts of it, there's quite a lot of set track in it, but for the flexible parts of the track, I bought Hornby Flexi Track. I think it was that long ago, I can't quite remember. But this is the stuff I used, and I found it endlessly, immensely frustrating, because it was so flexible that it kind of, whenever I was working on it, it just, whenever I moved it and tried to set it to where I wanted to be, especially on a curve, it just, like elastic, it pinged back. And working on corners, especially working with kind of trusses around and things like that, it was always getting caught and snagged on them, and I found it really difficult to work with just because of that. And I didn't realise, I thought that was just how all flexible track was. But this time, as I've had to buy new track, I've bought some of the Pico stuff, and I'm amazed at how different it is, and just how malleable it is. I mean, okay, it doesn't stay exactly where it is, but it's so much easier to work with, because once you've got it roughly set to where you want it to be, it doesn't fight you. It just stays there. And okay, it needs fastening down to be precisely where it is, but just that willingness to cooperate that it has over the stuff that I've been fighting with for 6 years has been a real huge bonus, and I'm wondering if I may even enjoy laying track for the top deck. And then one last thing, really. All this talk of a station has got me thinking about something that I was adamant I wasn't going to do, which is give the layout, or the station at least, a name. It's probably worth saying the name of this channel is rubbish. I was probably going through watching Apprentice, Alan Sugar type phase where I was adamant that the name of the thing had to reflect what it was, and at the time, kind of 5-6 years ago in the last loft, that's what it was. I was using vintage old 80s trains, and I was doing it in the loft, so the name kind of came naturally. But it is a rubbish name, and I think if I'm going to have a station, and I'm going to have that station with scenery and everything, part of that scenery is to have a name plate on the station platform. So I really now need to start thinking about giving the the station, and probably therefore the layout, and therefore the YouTube channel, a name. And while, even though I perhaps don't need to be as unsubtly blatant about the name of the channel as I was before, I still want, if I'm going to give the station a name, I want it to have a name that somehow reflects the origins and of the layout, and maybe the reasons why I built it. I really do intend to learn all those scenery techniques and eventually make this a scenic layout. There's no getting away from the fact that I'd been in this house 2 years before I decided I was going to build this layout up here, and the real motivation to do it was I was into all this technology like Arduinos and all that kind of stuff, and I realized that a train set up here, a layout, would give me the opportunity to use those devices and all that kind of thing in a useful way, I guess, relatively useful way. And so the absolute origin of this layout and the reason why I built it is the wire, the technology, and all that kind of stuff. And another possibly very distinctive feature of this layout, maybe above all others, is my lack of hurry to get rid of the baseboard, the wood. I actually, coming from train sets, again, I was never really into trains. I'm not into trains, but I had train sets and I loved them, and they always just ran on baseboard. I never did scenery on train sets, even as a kid, apart from shoving the odd green Hornby fake tunnel over a bit of track. And something that's I don't know, implanted in me almost, is I quite like the look of track on baseboard, on plywood. And there are channels that have been around, on YouTube for maybe 10 years or stuff, and they've got fantastic, amazing scenery on them that's been so meticulously created. But I still go back and watch the videos where there was no scenery, where it's just track on baseboard in a loft, because there's something about that appeals to me. And I am going to get rid of it. I am going to put scenery on here, but again, the root of this layout has to be the fact that it was track on wood. And therefore, really, the origins of this layout have to be wire and wood. And in the absence of any other better ideas, I mean, Calamity Junction did cross my mind for a long time. I think that's very reflective of how this layout has evolved. I think in the absence of any better ideas, I think wire and wood is possibly a good name and very reflective of its origins. But of course, being up north, it might well be pronounced Wirran Wood, but that might well be the name that I'm gonna go forward with, in the absence of any other better suggestions. And if anyone has any, no matter how derogatory, please feel free to add them in the comments. So really, that's where I am. The station, as it currently is, has a provisional name. All of the technology is now working and reliable, and I'm really starting to trust that I'm not going to need to do anything significant with that. I really could, if I'm being really good, I should put some scenery down here, just because it will be two bridges, and I think, if there's going to be little bits of scenery down here, it could do with going a little way under the bridge, just so that it doesn't disappear no matter how dark it might be under there. So if I'm being really good, I could at least do with laying some ballast down here and maybe getting a little bit of paint. Now, I'm handy with a paintbrush, but after that, it really is just going to be a case of bringing all this track around, and that's going to be quite a boring process, and I'm not intending to film any of it, just because it's very repetitive, and I'm by no means the most skilled, patient, or experienced track layer around. So I'm probably best keeping my amateurish track laying to myself.